My name is Belisa Quinton. I'm filming this mini video podcast in recognition of the Year of the Youth campaign, hashtag Our Voice, Our Future. I decided to use this platform to speak on the issue of mental health and the ways in which it can be linked to pressing issues within our international community. My first guest embodies what it means to be a youth activist. Her and I met at the United Nations Simulation Conference, coordinated by the Best Diplomats organization. She proved to be an exceptional block leader, which granted her the prize of the best delegate at that conference. Amina, it is a pleasure to have you here. And to begin, can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Thank you so much, my dear. The pleasure is all mine to be here with you. So allow me, first of all, to thank you for joining me to this podcast. I hope I will meet your expectations from me. So to begin with, my name is Amina and I am an Algerian. I'm a graduate from Political Sciences and International Relations faculty with a master's degree. I'm currently an English language tutor and an import manager in an import and distribution of medical disposable equipment and surgery instruments. Indeed, I've been awarded two consecutive times, the award of the best diplomat, best delegate at the MUN simulation. And here I am with you, pleased to serve and to help you with my little experience in this domain.
Well,
the floor is you.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here. One of the reasons why I wanted you to be here and why it was so important for you to be here, some of our discussions that we would have had within our block meetings, hashtag resolution 1.2 all the way. You talked a lot about the refugee crisis and why it was important to you and why it was important to bring awareness to the topic. So I wanted you to be on this platform to give our viewers a bit of an understanding of what the refugee crisis is and why it's important to you.
So thank you for this question. As you know, whenever we say the word refugees, for me, it sounds a little bit weird for the simple reason. First of all, I always highlight we should make a common sense for refugees. We should agree on the sense that a refugee is also a human. We are speaking about people, humans, just like you and me, all right? So unfortunately, nowadays, there are a lot of crises around the world, and refugees are considered as outsiders coming in the country, and sometimes most of the time, they are not well treated. I have witnessed this in many occasions, whether in some Arab countries or abroad, and this is why I have always felt that, hey guys, we should talk about it, we should raise the awareness around it, because who is refugee today was a simple citizen like you and I yesterday. And we today, we are citizens, we might be refugees tomorrow. You never know what happens in the world. So I think that it is high time to stop a moment and to reconsider this concept and think twice before we say the word refugee, and make it clear that we are speaking about humans. They are not a threat to our countries, but there are people who were obliged to flee or to leave their countries, and their circumstances they were not aware of. They didn't even want to. They did not even decide about. So in this case, we should reconsider the humanitarian case regarding the refugees.
Indeed, I agree. And I mean, from what you spoke to me about at that conference, it pushed me to learn a bit more about the refugee crisis. And what's a bit concerning is that the WHO recorded in 2019 that there were over 272 million international refugees across the world. And that was in 2019. So I could only imagine how that would have increased between then and now in 2020, where we've got the Russia-Ukraine situation, we've got so many other crises that would have been on the rise during that space of time.
You know, what I would like to highlight also is that there is something a little bit personal within the history of refugees in Algeria. As you may know, Algeria hosts the biggest camp of refugees of Western Sahara.
Yes.
So the Polisario people. We have the biggest camp. It counts actually 5 camps in the desert of Algeria. in Tindouf. And I personally have been in touch with His Excellency, the Ambassador of Western Sahara, and I have discussed with him a lot of issues regarding refugees, knowing that my state, Algeria, has given a lot of opportunities to those people and is still continuing to giving them a lot of priorities when it comes to work, studies, education, etc., access to healthcare, etc. Yet, I still see it minimum. Why? Simply because, as I told you, I feel that a refugee is a person who was asked to leave the country, intruders in a country. We was like, okay, please do not act as this is act as this is your country. It's my country. When it comes to tourists or visitors or whatever. So imagine with me when it comes to refugees, people who we consider that they are a threat because they would share with us food, inhabitants, studies, work opportunities, everything, like sharing with us our life. So this is why it is kind of critical situation, and we should make a clear definition around it. We should raise the awareness around it and get ourselves and our populations understand that those are people in need of help. They are not a threat. They have never been, and they will never be.
Indeed, I completely agree with you. I mean, to further add, there's a question that I want to ask. How is the issue of mental health directly linked to the refugee crisis? I mean, we've talked about forced migration. We've talked about the treatment they've received leaving their country. I mean, I cannot imagine how it feels to have to leave the comfort of my home to flee to somewhere else just for my own safety. So what would you think? How does the issue of mental health can directly be linked to the refugee crisis?
All right, thank you so much. This question is very deep, by the way. And to answer it, let me just ask you this small question. Alicia, imagine that if you were younger than the age you are at now, and somebody comes and takes you from your home, from your family, against your will. You start crying, looking for your mother. Your mother is trying to keep you with her, and she can't do anything about it, simply because the external force or the external power that is trying to take you out of her arms is bigger than her. You see? So tell me, what would be your feeling? Could you describe to me the situation? How would you feel?
Personally, I think I would be in distress because it's quite difficult for me to do anything without my mom, even at my growing age. I call her for everything. So being placed into that position, I feel like I'd probably go through some form of depression. I wouldn't know how to function. I mean, I'm being taken against my will. And at that age, how am I comprehending what's going on around me? You know, you're basically forced to mature yourself at a tender age, and that should never happen. So
Thank you, my dear.
I don't know how I'd be able to process something like that.
Thank you deeply. You know, when I said, imagine that you are taken from your mom, simply because we say that the countries are our mothers. And the feeling that we develop, the feeling of belonging that we develop inside our countries, the feeling of security, the feeling of knowing myself, the feeling of, yes, this is where I am, this is me, this is my home.
Indeed.
At a certain stage, when a war imposes on us to leave our countries, it means that we will leave all our principles, I would say our reliance, our belonging, we will lose ourselves. The idea is totally different from when you decide to travel abroad. It's not the same at all.
Exactly.
There is a big difference between an immigrant and a refugee.
Yeah.
If you want to leave your country looking for a better social life, that's your own decision. So you are psychologically speaking prepared for it. But when you are obliged to quit or to leave your country under the threat or under insecurity matters, at this stage, you would leave everything behind you. People have left their papers, their identities, they
Yeah.
left their memories, they left their lives. Some people were stable. They had education, a profession, homes, an entire life. And then they found themselves from a second to another with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were intellectuals. They had their social class, social consideration in their countries. They found themselves with nothing. They found themselves being treated as a threat. Thus, unfortunately, in some countries, less than animals, less than pets. And this is the reality. I'm not saying something from my head. We can just have a look around some countries where refugees exist, and you will see in the street, and you will have your own affirmation. We have witnessed this with refugees from Mali, refugees from Niger, refugees from Syria, refugees from Yemen, in Europe, around Africa, around America that we see. It's true. Some refugee camps where the United Nations is active, etc., the UNHCR is active, etc.
Yes.
But behind this beautiful image where they have good actions, not to eliminate their role, by the way, it's really important to support them and to highlight their role. They're doing very good things. Yet there is another reality behind it that we shouldn't hide, you see. And as I told you, this feeling of losing yourself, losing your life, out of second you don't have any of your I would say your pillars. This automatically will make you feel stressed and under depression.
Yeah.
You have said it. You have said it in your description. We just said that you will be maybe taken out of your mother for a few minutes, few times. You are a child. You said, I can't live without my mom. So imagine if you find yourself with nothing. You don't even have money. You don't even, if you had a car, you don't have a home. You don't have food, you have clothes. You feel like, I am who I am. You would question yourself, am I a citizen of this world? Am I truly a citizen of this world? You see? So
Yeah.
mentally speaking, those people will go on depression because they cannot accept this situation. They cannot tolerate. Some of them would even think to go to the left side completely, so they would become radical about it. And we can see that some of them would even think of joining, unfortunately, some terrorist groups. Some others would go and join gangs. They would become criminals. Why all this? Simply because they have been tortured, mentally tortured. And this torture has caused to them this imbalance. They can't understand anything. Nobody listens to them. So they automatically experience a complete mental disorder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Even thinking about it, I mean, having to leave what you're so accustomed to. I mean, people say you need to get uncomfortable. You need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? But in a situation like that, it's completely different. You're leaving what you're so used to. You're leaving your good job. You're leaving, in some cases, your family, and you've got to start all over again from scratch. You know, and you're coming into a society that does not necessarily accept you for who you are. So you're faced with anxiety, you know, you're anxious, you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. Am I still going to be alive tomorrow? How am I going to make it through? There's PTSD of what you would have gone through. Like you asked me just now to imagine myself being taken away from my mother. The stress of that entire situation would set me off personally. And I mean, to imagine somebody else who's probably going through that right now. That's the reality of their life. They'll probably never see their parent again. In some cases they might, but that's out of luck, you know? So I agree with you. I do think that there's so much more that we've got to do to raise awareness to the crisis. There's so much more we've got to do as youths to, encourage conversations, try to find ways in which we can eradicate the cause. So that brings me to my next question. If you were placed into an international organization with the responsibility of creating a task force directly linked to dealing with the impacts of mental health in refugees, what would be your implementation and why?
So to be honest with you, personally, the first thing that I would look at is, as I told you, raising awareness about the definition of refugee. So it is important to make every single person know and understand that a refugee is a person just like you and I. So they are people. So we have to look at them as humans. Yeah. We have to look at them as needy people who need our help. We have to look at them as part of us. We have to learn how to put ourselves in their shoes. It is very important. So in this situation, how can we raise the awareness? There is no better awareness than education.
Yes.
So in this situation, personally, I would think of making or implementing classes or lessons about or workshops about refugees within primary schools, so that the child grow the acceptance of refugees, and that a refugee is just a country in order not to make them poor environment. So we have to be careful. So they miss their countries. They were this obligation, this compulsory decision that is imposed on the refugee, and then let them understand that those people also need education, they need food, and maybe some of them are very smart, so they can even help you in your country to improve your country, etc. Let's consider them as an added value in your country, not the opposite. Yeah. So raising this education spirit, in my opinion, is going to help populations around the world being familiar and accept more tolerable, being tolerant around the refugees in the world.
Okay. Thank you so much for that answer. I agree with you. And in closing, I need to thank you again for allowing me to have you on this platform. Thank you for answering all of my questions. Thank you for being open. I'm extremely grateful.